Satan's greatest weapon is man's ignorance of God's word. John 8:32 teaches us, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." In the age of facts first, this is a very important thing to know, because not all truth is based in fact, and not all facts lead you to the truth. And I can show you one image that reveals this. Is it an orange square, or is it a blue circle? Depending on your perspective, you'd have one set of facts. You would have an entirely different one from another perspective, but then you take a third perspective and you realize how both conflicting set of facts equal the truth. Now, this is just one example, but there are a couple of others that are in the mainstream media right now that I would like to illuminate in today's video and reveal what they are trying to do. I'm sure many of you have seen the story earlier today, actually late last night, that a U.S. judge has said that Florida can't ban cruise ships' vaccine passport program. Well, it's not really a vaccine passport program, number one. You see, what these cruise lines, Norwegian in this particular case, want to do is be able to report to their insurers that they are cruising with 95% of those on board vaccinated. Well, the first thing that's going to do is that's going to rule out families, because children 12 and under aren't allowed to get the vaccine facts first. So that's going to mess with their bottom line. Because if you have a mom and dad and two kids, 2 are vaccinated, 2 are not, that equals 50%. That's going to destroy their 95% goal. But there are other things the state of Florida can do. We can charge dock fees. We can charge mooring fees, unmooring fees, remooring fees, port fees, starboard fees, aft fees, all sorts of different charges and ways of messing with their bottom line for violating our law. I sure hope they don't need the assistance of any of our local authorities to enforce anything. They might be too busy. See, they're not entitled to any of that. If they want to get into a measuring contest with the state of Florida, they'll lose. Because we'll just push people to other cruise lines that aren't trying to defy our law. Because remember, the goal of Norwegian is one thing: make money. That's it. That's their whole goal, just like any cruise line. And we'll make it as hard as possible. That's what happens when you cross a state that you need to run your business in. Now, the judge that did this, Kathleen Williams, is an Obama appointee. I hope somebody out there, if they see her in the grocery store or at the gas station or shopping, take the time to exercise their First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, and let her know exactly what they think of her ruling against the state of Florida. Now, in other news, CNN, Facts First, some months ago, was counseling people that it was okay to go out and pick up random bugs off the ground that have been there for 17 years and shove them in your mouth. Roll them in chocolate, make sushi of them. See, that's what they thought was a good idea, regardless of the health benefits of it. Now, here we are so many months later, and they're wanting to demonize the governor of Florida because they believe they have the facts on their side, saying that he hasn't done enough to get people vaccinated because of some perceived idea that there are low vaccination rates in Florida. Well, I'm going to share a video with you today from all the way back in February where the governor completely destroys this narrative. It's going to be about 6-7 minute clip, and you'll be able to hear the governor and his position on vaccines. At one time, Florida was the #1 state in the union for people having been vaccinated. But I'm letting the governor speak in his own words here so that you can hear him, especially in this particular case, aiming the vaccines toward the minority community at, pay attention here, at the request of the minority community, voluntarily coming to the governor and saying, hey, we need vaccines in our region. Can you bring them? This wasn't the state mandating them. This wasn't the state forcing them. This was a minority community reaching out to one of their heroes, Anquan Boldin, here on the left, who went to John Lewis, the head of the Florida Lottery, appointed by Governor DeSantis. John Lewis then came to the governor and said, this minority community here in Florida is requesting a pod of vaccines be brought to their area because they would like this voluntarily. And the governor made it happen literally overnight, and both of these men absolutely applaud and laud the governor for his efforts here. But let's listen to facts first here, shall we? Give me 1 second to get the microphone adjusted, and you can hear the governor in his own words from February of this year.
Probably another great thing to be able to do. But that's really where we're at. We get about 307,000 this week from the federal government. There's not vaccine just sitting around. It's whatever's here is distributed, and the goal is to get it into people's arms, and that's what we're doing. Our strategy is going to continue to be seniors first. Seniors first. We have 4.5 million 65 and up throughout the state of Florida, and we have probably, if you count for the reporting delay, we've probably given shots to about 1.5 million seniors. I think it shows up as about 1.3 million, but there is reporting delay here. Either way, that's #1 in the nation by far. No other state even has 1 million. And we're about 30% of all seniors in Florida have received at least one shot. Now, obviously, we want to keep going. It's not going to be 100% because I don't think 100% are going to opt for it. But we do think the majority of seniors are going to opt for it. So we're going to continue to do it. But that's going to be the goal, getting every senior who wants a shot. They get a shot, and then at that point, you'll be able to start looking into some of the other areas. I know there's a lot of folks in the workforce. I know there's others who will be able to do it. From the very beginning, though, it's important to point out, with my order in December, we always said hospitals can be giving this to people that are very vulnerable to COVID, regardless of their age. And so I know a lot of hospitals have gone to their cancer patients and all that. They're still authorized to do that. So if you have somebody that is over 65 and is especially vulnerable, clearly you want to vaccinate them. But if you have somebody that may not be quite that old, but has some conditions that really could be aggravated by COVID, hospitals are, of course, permitted to be able to do that, and we trust their medical judgment on that. Johnson & Johnson. It's really important for people to understand, because sometimes these things get portrayed one way or another. I was seeing a lot of reports saying, oh, not as good as Pfizer and Moderna, 67% of efficacy. Actually, it was a lot more than that in the U.S. It was closer to 80%, but they averaged all the figures from around the world. So let's just call it that. But that is efficacy about completely preventing the infection. What they found was after 28 days of taking the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it was 100% effective at eliminating death. And it was close to 100% effective at preventing hospitalizations. And so what that means is one dose, 28 days, no freezing, none of that, after one dose, you effectively convert COVID from something that could be life-threatening to certain folks, particularly elderly people or folks with health conditions, and you take it to something that maybe you have a cold-like or flu-like symptoms for a couple of days. So that takes it from death or severe disease down to something that would not even require you to see a doctor or go to the hospital. So that is a very good tool to have. I think the results were fantastic. I'm looking forward to us being able to get some Johnson & Johnson vaccine when the emergency use authorization is approved. We assume it's going to be approved based on the data that we're seeing. So they're probably going to file. We think they'll file this week, hopefully. And then you're looking at an approval in 7 to 14 days after that. We're not sure how many doses are going to be ready to go at the outset. They're going to do 100 million of them, but I don't know that that's going to be done for another couple months. So hopefully they're able to distribute millions of doses throughout the country. We welcome that in Florida, and we think we can put that to good use. Look, the seniors who want the Pfizer Moderna, that's fine. If that's what you want, that's what you want. But this J&J is a great tool, and I think it's something that, particularly if it gets produced at a bigger scale, you're going to be able to use that for police officers, for teachers, for all these folks, and it can be really, really good for us. So I'm excited about it. I think it's really, really good. And finally, let me just say, before I introduce some of our speakers, since December 1st, Florida, on a per capita basis for cases and hospitalizations, have been 30 out of 50 states. So 29 states have had higher per capita caseloads and higher per capita hospitalizations than the state of Florida. Yesterday's hospital census was, I think it was like 5990. That's down. Man, that's probably down 25-30% just from the middle of January. Part of that is just the natural seasonal flow of this virus. It's behaving pretty much similar like a flu would behave in terms of when it peaks and when it goes down. The only difference is there's really no flu cases anymore. And so the pediatric respiratory hospitalizations are down sharply year over year, which is a really good thing. I mean, COVID is obviously more of a threat than influenza for seniors, but for kids, the hospitalizations for respiratory viruses are way down. You will have fewer throughout the United States deaths from respiratory viruses from minors as a result of influenza being displaced. But that's where we're at. You're seeing it go down all across the country. Probably most of that is the seasonal effect. But the more vaccine we get out there, I think that will pretty much guard against there being a sharp increase like you saw in New York last March, or like you've seen in California recently, or even like the Sun Belt at a much lower level that we experienced over the summer. So all in all, I think people should be really optimistic. I know the demand is still a lot higher than the supply. Trust us, whatever the federal government will send us, we're going to get out there. We want to get as much as we can because I know a lot of folks want it. The good news is we have a lot more seniors that have gotten the shot today than if you go back a month ago. We really had just begun doing seniors. We had done a lot of the nurses and the doctors, and then also the nursing homes, which is very important. And so we've made a lot of ground up, and I think we can make up even more based on how much we're able to get into the federal government. So today, though, I think is great. When Anquan Bolden talked to John, they know each other from being from here, and they're both great football players. John came to us and said, is there any way we can make this happen? And I'm like, we need to make it happen because we have done a lot of good things in Palm Beach. All these Publix, people like it. It's doing well, but they don't have access to that here. So we want to make sure we work on getting access to communities across the board.
Now, I'm going to put up the entire video of this over at Patreon. Because, funny story, when I put this video up back February, YouTube demonetized it, forcing me to delete it. Now, you'd have to ask yourself why. Why would YouTube demonetize this video? Where it talks about Governor DeSantis helping vulnerable communities, people of color, get the vaccine that they asked for voluntarily, they wanted. See, a lot of the anti-vaxxers have mischaracterized our governor. he has brought it and done press conferences where it was asked for, where people said they needed it and they wanted it. You see, the anti-vaxxers are actually doing the bidding of CNN and Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't like our governor. He's taken too much of his limelight. So he's working with them and the anti-vaxxers to create this situation you see now. Still feel like you're on the right side, anti-vaxxer? See, it's okay for you not to want it for yourself, but to become an activist against it, you're working with CNN. Oh, and by the way, let's talk about some numbers real quick. Florida has more seniors, more 65 and up people, facts first, than New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine have total people combined. Facts first. Vermont, 623, New Hampshire, 1.37, and Maine, 1.3. You can add up those numbers for yourself, and you can see that we have more. In February, we were number one. No one had even had 1 million at that point, and we were over 1 million. So to characterize our governor as somehow pushing this idea of anti-vax is just ridiculous, or causing hesitancy or anything like that. If you really want to see it, go look in New York. Here's an article from For New York, January 25, right before the press conference with the governor we just covered. Vaccine hesitancy reaches 42% among NYC residents, primarily amongst African Americans, 18 to 44 at that time. 75% hadn't been vaccinated. Facts first. And what was said here really kind of gives up the game. If you scroll down to this article from the city, and you go all the way down to where it says getting schooled, right above it, the conversations make the healthcare veteran feel thoroughly helpless and useless. To try to convince younger people, he frames getting the vaccines as a personal choice, but he knows the stakes are far larger. Quote, from New York, the moment that you get sick and you expose us to an illness, it becomes a community problem. Now some say, well, what does that have to do with anything? They've been trying to debunk this idea of the border having anything to do with it. Politico tried to debunk the governor, saying that his statement about the border being wide open being false. Well, that's partially true. But as the article from New York City says, it only takes one. It only takes two. It only takes three. And it can run like wildfire, especially with the facts first Delta variant that originated overseas, originated from India. Facts first, confirmed by the President of the United States, Joe Biden. So all these people, sorry about that, trying to demonize our governor are just wrong. They're just absolutely wrong about all this. We were number one. Our governor did everything he possibly could do to get people vaccinated and has been doing this. And the biggest thing he's fought has been this idea of hesitancy that's largely been pushed by a very tiny group of people who believe that because they have an opinion about the vaccine, that they should become activists to try to convince other people to have that opinion. Time to look in the mirror, guys. Time to look in the mirror about what truth is. Maybe perhaps try to look at things from other perspectives, and you might actually get a clue as to what the real truth is. And I will leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe, and we will, of course, see you guys tonight on Twitch. Once again, the full video from Governor DeSantis in Pahokee, Florida, will be up at patreon.com/Florida Maquis, just like it sounds. FLORIDA Maquis.